Thank you all for joining us for this update on Hurricane Fiona and the cleanup and recovery effort that's been ongoing in the southwest coast. We thought that this would be a good opportunity to provide an update. I know there's many questions, and of course it's still an evolving and changing situation, but we wanted to do our best to provide details as efficiently and as accurately as we can. I've been in regular contact, of course, with Minister Parsons, who's spent the majority of his time on the ground there, and Mayor Button from Port aux Basques and other municipal leaders who have been hard at work looking after the citizens of the area, the southwest coast, and ensuring that they have a coordinated effort in the relief portion of this natural disaster. In fact, last night I spoke with Brigadier General Masson, who stressed the importance of widening the scope of the military response in the area, and of course he gave us his reassurance that that was their intention. I have to tell you the outpouring of donations and support from the people of the province and in fact across the country have been overwhelming, and speaks to the spirit of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians here and abroad, and in fact Canadians, when we come together to support each other during times of disaster. In terms of actual numbers, some updates for you. As of today, there are 805 households registered with the Canadian Red Cross. That represents over 1,000 people. There's 260 dwellings that have been reported as being impacted by the hurricane. And of that 260, structural assessments for the structural integrity of the properties have been completed on 254 dwellings. And the remaining 6 assessments in Burgeo are being completed today. The Hurricane Fiona Incident Command Center and officials in the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure have been making significant progress both on the infrastructure of people's homes and municipal infrastructure, roads, culverts, etc. Officials continue to be doing regular evaluations of the municipal infrastructure and how we can improve it along the way. But I'm pleased to say that it appears now all routes are open and work continues on repair in the different communities to ensure they stay open. As you are well aware, last week we announced a relief package, and I'm happy to report as of Monday, the Red Cross started distributing our immediate provincial government funding, and that has reached some of the people as we sit here and speak today. Just a reminder for those who could be eligible, there's over $1,000 per household for those who are temporarily evacuated from their principal residence but were able to return by September 30th. There's $10,000 available for those who have been displaced from their principal residence and have been unable to return by September 30th. Our government continues to work with the Red Cross to ensure that the $250,000 that was allocated for immediate rent relief and housing relief is being appropriately distributed, and of course the additional $500,000 that was been made available from municipalities, towns, in the southwest region to ensure that any extra expenses that they have incurred will be looked after in the relief effort. Want to continue to stress that safety is paramount in the recovery effort and relief effort at this point. We know there's the temptation to return to the site, but please follow the rules, follow the guidance of professionals who have been out there and assessing the situation. We are continued to really get a better handle on the needs of the community in terms of the rebuild. I know everyone will have a lot of questions about the rebuilding process. We're still working through that currently, but rest assured we will be there to ensure that the community is rebuilt in a stronger fashion, one that is reflective of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians in general. We'll be resilient and we'll rebuild this in a stronger way than it was before. So with more details, I'll turn it over to Minister Loveless. Minister.
Thank you, Premier. And just to echo some of the words that the Premier has said, I believe is very important as well in conversations with Minister Parsons too. While we remind everybody in the communities, while crews are out on the roads doing their work, please don't be there. Stay home, and because safety is always paramount, and crews need to do their work. And when I understand people want to get out and see the results, see what's happening, but we encourage them to please not do that. Let the crews do their work and do it diligently. And to report, I guess, on roadways, we've been at the beginning of the storm, the roadways, we didn't have major destruction of roadways. It was minor in terms of debris, but we did have some work. We called on contractors to get into work, to do the work. Like in Port of Bass, a contractor is beginning work today on the Grand Bay West Bridge in the community. And highways like Route 470 is open to one lane, Route 408, and that's a road to Cape Ray. Contractor is beginning work there today. And same in Burnt Islands, we have 3 areas where 95% has been complete, so work is ongoing. It's going very well. I chatted with the deputy mayor in Burnt Islands last night. I chatted with the mayor of Port of Bass as well, and things are going well. And so other than that, it's progress, and we're pleased with that, and I'll end it right there.
Well, thank you, Minister. We'll certainly open it up to questions from the media now. No questions? Thank you very much.
You said you were speaking with the military about expanding the scope. Can you elaborate a bit on that, please?
Yeah, sure. So we're, we recognize that there's significant damage and debris that needs to be carefully thought about. Different, perhaps, than some other areas that have been impacted. When it's someone's home that hasn't, there are still heirlooms and there's still keepsakes and pieces of personal items that can be recovered. So different than cleaning up trees, for example, which can be done, with a chainsaw fairly quickly and strategically. This requires a bit more thought. So expanding the time that the military are there to allow for people to potentially access those items and keepsakes and personal items, and then look at removing the debris, for example. In addition to that, in addition to the terrestrial debris, there's a significant amount of marine debris that is present and represents a future threat. And I know we expanded our request for assistance through the military, but would also include other federal government assets, for example, in helping clean up the marine environment so that existing vessels, for example, aren't at risk from floating debris. So that was some of the conversation I had last night with the military, and it was quite well received. I've had those discussions, of course, with the Prime Minister and the Minister of National Defence as well, and they've given me reassurance that they will be here for whatever is required.
Will this expand to actually getting into the coastline water marine environment and actually extracting from the ocean floor anything that's valuable or anything that's a hazard, like actual from the ocean floor, as opposed to something floating on the surface?
Well, of course, all that's being evaluated right now. Anything that is, first and foremost, hazards, that's the most important thing. But we'll be looking at what's been displaced and what's retrievable, what's a hazard, what's a safety risk, and of course they'll be triaged appropriately and dealt with first, and move from there.
And is there, outside of all of the relief, and I'm wondering about the coordination of, there's been so many different convoy people leaving from here, different parts of the province, people trying to contribute. Just wondering how all that's happening and being consolidated once it flows into the community. So
it's happening fairly well. We recognized immediately that that was going to be an issue, right? Like in any natural disaster, the coordination and the communication in the early phases is very important. And so that's why we set up a provincial incident command team on the ground in Port of Bass, dealing with the whole southwest coast, of course. So that they could coordinate all the efforts of governmental and non-governmental agencies and organizations, volunteers in one area, so that we weren't having military repeat the tasks that were being done by personnel from the Department of Infrastructure and Transportation Infrastructure, for example. So the coordination has been well received from municipal leaders. And has been quite effective in ensuring that there's an efficient deployment of resources, recognizing, of course, the scarcity of the resource available.
We've been hearing from some folks who say that insurance companies are saying they're not going to cover things. What are you hearing about that? What do you know about it? And is there anything government can do?
Yeah, sure. That was part of the $30 million we announced last week. I know the federal government has also announced another package today, but I can tell you that they were the most heartbreaking stories when you're standing on the side of a road, and we were in Marguerite, I think, and talking to a gentleman who owned his house, and it was lifted, twisted, sat back down, waterlogged, demolished. He said, he didn't have any insurance or wasn't going to be covered, but here was his whole life savings, his whole home that he'd lived in for basically his whole adult life. And when we told him, don't worry about it, the $30 million package will look after you could see the stress and strain come from his shoulders, come from his face, and there was a great deal of relief. When you're faced with losing your home, not just your house, your home, I mean, and then trying to figure out how you're going to pay for things, to have this provincial program in place as a backstop for those who are uninsurable or insurance doesn't cover is something that we wanted to do, and we did do as we recognized as immediate need. So many of the people there have been very appreciative and understand that this program is in place. I don't know, Minister, if you want to...
Yeah, I can jump in. There's certainly a frustration on the ground with the insurance companies per se. There's been adjusters moving around, and the general consensus seems to be in most cases there will not be coverage. I think we've managed to take care of the immediate, I guess, concern, which is, we're telling people we're going to be there for you. The insurance part we will figure out. That's something I know the minister we'll be talking about. The minister responsible for digital government service now, Sarah Studley, is actually going to be meeting with insurance companies because it falls under her. So it's not an immediate issue at the time for us. I think people are mostly concerned with right now, like, what's the housing situation going to be? How do I pay for that? And what's the long term? So what we've assured is we'll figure that out. But yes, there will be a greater conversation with insurance coverage going forward. How do we deal with that? Because even in any normal insurance situation, you have times when there's a refusal of coverage and you have to litigate that or to contest it. And in this case, you just multiply that, widefold. So like I say, there will be some further conversations, but right now most of the people have gotten their, the denial of coverage, and they're just trying to figure out these current day-to-day issues.
But rest assured, we want those people to be rest assured that regardless of what the decision ultimately is, litigated or not, we will be there for them in the rebuild. That's part of the $30 million.
Such a cleanup is really complex. I mean, from beginning to end, I guess. What's been the most challenging part for you guys? Anything that you found that unexpected came up unexpectedly, or what's been the most challenging?
Well, you go ahead.
The challenging part, I think, is we're people too, and to hear those personal stories and to walk around in the debris site and see personal items, Christmas decorations for me, like, really kind of struck a chord. Because we all accumulate Christmas decorations over our lives, and to see them kind of thrown about and under a collapsed home really makes it more than an image. It makes it more than a piece of infrastructure. It makes it someone's home and their life.
Yeah, I would echo that. I was speaking to a friend of mine the other night, and he just wanted to get in and get his military medals. That was his biggest concern. And again, this is a person who lost things that have more perhaps financial value. But the value that held for him was, you can't put a dollar figure on, and you multiply that by the number of people. The other issue is just the sheer number of houses affected trying to get in and do these very necessary structural integrity assessments to see what is safe and what's not, and in many cases that just takes time. So people are very understanding, but there's a frustration that comes with that amongst all of us. Speaking and knowing when I was there, even today, getting calls and speaking with the mayors, just every day checking, can I get back in? Can I get back in? Can I get back in? So that's been difficult, knowing whether you're going to go back or not, and then the personal effects. That's and just in many cases, trying to get in and see what you can. Like, can I get in just to salvage what I can and get back out? And it's hard telling people no, but it is for everybody's safety. We can't risk a further tragedy just in the cleanup effort.
Is there a long-term plan for people who are displaced right now?
Yeah, so that's part of the $30 million is to rebuild the community, the homes that were lost. And that will have some consideration, of course, for mitigation of extreme weather events in the future, but will be done with due consultation with the municipal leaders and the homeowners. We will be we'll be putting together a cabinet committee in the next coming days that will look exclusively at that long-term issue. As we know that will be, it may not be immediate in mind, but it'll be top of mind for everyone as they kind of navigate to the next stage. It's going to be, it's going to be frustrating for people, and we want to minimize that frustration as best we can. And That's why we announced last week that we would be there in the short term, but also in the long term. And coordinating across government departments through a cabinet committee will allow us to achieve that goal.
Would that include housing, for example?
Yes, yeah, no, with it. So just to be clear, so someone just say your house is worth, I'm going to pick a number out of thin air, $200,000, and it's gone, and the insurance doesn't cover it. We will be there to rebuild, a house equivalent somewhere in the region that is, again, after consultation with you and the municipality. So we will be there for the rebuild at no cost to you. We will assume that cost out of that $30 million.
I can say, just speaking in Port of Bass, for example, where there's probably the largest number of houses hit, there's already work ongoing in terms of municipal planning for where we can set up next. They already had a plan in place for further expansion. Now that will be expedited. But Crown Lands, Minister Bragg has been right there saying whatever we need to do to figure that out. Newfoundland and Labrador Housing has been in touch in terms of what can we do to look at different units and things like that. So that's absolutely ongoing, but it's just sort of happening parallel with all these other, efforts at the same time.
Hurricanes are going to become more frequent, as everybody knows. Has there been any lessons learned or anything that you'll be doing differently as a result?
Well, I think anytime there's a natural disaster, that's an important that's important to consider in the rebuild process. And whether it was the hurricane that hit the southwest coast last year or this one is obviously a bit more severe, the rebuild has to have due consideration for mitigation strategy, which, of course, we're doing. We're simple things. They may seem like they're not going to fight climate change, and perhaps they won't, but they'll help mitigate the extreme weather events that weren't in existence 30 years ago, for example, putting in bigger culverts, putting in extra capacity on roads to ensuring that, places aren't cut off. Those are all things that I know the minister and his department have been considering when rebuilding from any of the disasters that has faced the province in the last couple of years.
Sorry, a few things on the $30 million. First of all, so just to be clear, as you said, no cost to you. So that's no questions asked. That's an amount that they can get if they don't have insurance to rebuild, for example, a $200,000 home.
Yeah, the process, again, will be frustrating and will be necessary. You'll have to show that you're denied the insurance and all that kind of stuff.
When it's legitimate,
yep.
You've gotten down to that. So $200,000 was an example. Is there a cutoff, like a limit on how much you would pay?
We haven't contemplated a limit just yet.
Okay.
That was just a random number
sure.
I pulled out of thin air.
Yeah, I just wondered if there's a general limit. Okay, and I'm wondering about the precedent for other events. So are you concerned that you might set a precedent here? I mean, there's no questions asked here. You're denied
No,
insurance.
my primary concern is that there are people without homes. That's my concern. And so precedent aside, it's our duty as citizens, regardless as leaders, to ensure people in Newfoundland and Labrador have homes. This was a significant natural event that was no fault of theirs. And we need to make sure that as a government, we're there to support them, and we will be.
Yeah, just wondering if there's a finite cutoff.
I mean,
I think you can't ring fence and put parameters around natural disaster specifically. You don't have to look to us. Look at the U.S. Like there's different programs announced every time a hurricane hits Florida, for example. Different natural disasters are different, and they require different responses. So to put significant parameters around a general response would be, I think, wrong, and we'd only be here telling you how we're going to skirt them or change them. Yeah, it's very much on an individual case by case.
The reality is, I mean, the biggest concern the Premier and I and the mayors, and all the ministers had was coming up with something immediate to take away some of that stress. But there's also an acknowledgement that we are far from knowing what this is going to cost. There is still a lot of work to be done. So there will be analysis the entire time through this. But there was an immediate need when you have people wait. We didn't want people waiting to hear about where they're going to sleep and things like that. Now these same people, at the same time, to a person have said, we know this is going to take some time and there's a process. We can't just, like I say, there has to be a diligence to that. They get that. And my biggest thing is saying to them, well, we're going to work with you throughout this to help you, guide you through this process. And this is if there's one line I've said all along, that this is a marathon, not a sprint. I'm trying to tell people that because you don't recover from this in days or weeks. This is months and who knows how long. But there are short-term, immediate needs. Then there will be longer-term issues, and we're trying to sort of deal with those as they come.
Of course, we're very cognizant of people's mental health throughout all of that, and so if there's anyone at home who's watching this who is suffering with a mental health issue as a result, directly or indirectly from this, please reach out to a professional, call 811. There is help available.
I just wanted, sorry, just about the cost, because you asked about it. Like, there is a disaster financial assistance package which the federal government provides. When you think about that program, the threshold for that is $1.7 million. So it's pretty clear when that program was created, they didn't contemplate natural disasters such as this. I mean, we immediately came out within a week with $30 million, 15 times what the threshold of the program is, right? So as the Premier said, people's mental health and where they're going to live is the main concern, and that's why there was immediate a package announced to put those people's minds at ease. And we'll work with the individuals now when we get their claims, and I encourage them to continue to go through their insurance companies, even if they're going to get denial letters, because it is important for the provincial government to receive those denial letters, to go to the federal government with their totality of the claim when the time comes. It's going to take some time to deal with the federal government. Now, there is a program. That program does allow for interim payments as we go through the process and to come up with the totals. But that program is there, and it is important for individuals to participate as we move forward with that assessment of the values.
You mentioned that it's going to take some time, and it is frustrating, obviously, for folks. Do you have, I guess, a goal in mind in terms of how soon you might be able to get new homes built for people, or people?
I mean, the only answer is as fast as we can, and I mean, there have to be a consultation process. And the Cabinet Committee will look at that, and perhaps we'll go to outside expertise to look at even a commission style, like how should we do this in the best interest. But it's still early days, relatively speaking, when you look at a natural disaster cycle. They're still very much in the early days. I know it's cold comfort to people who have been displaced, but the short answer is as fast as we can. The longer answer is we don't have a definitive timeline.
There's an acknowledgement amongst people that they know this is going to take time. Even you look at a normal summer build season at home, just the amount of labor that's available. This is much above and beyond that. So it's going to require some coordination, just in terms of if you had every contractor back in that area working on this, it still would not be enough to get everybody that's displaced. So this is, like I say, this is going to require some big conversations amongst different groups, contractors, you name it. We're probably going to have to look to the Building Contractors Association, a whole number of things to figure that out. And as even today, it seems like we're dealing with the immediate, which is getting money into people's hands, getting structural assessments done, getting the immediate work done, making sure everybody has some kind of, I'll call it, temporary permanent situation for the next number of months. At the same time as we do that, we know that there's a situation right behind us where we also have to think long term, but definitely don't have the answers. But I can say I haven't run into a person yet who's didn't get that, even through all this frustration they have. And I just so I clarify, their frustration is not at any person, any government, any entity. If anything, the understanding amongst people that have been hit this way has been amazing. They're just frustrated at the situation, like I think we all would when you just in just a second you have your everything you've done sort of taken away. People have been very understanding, but at the same time, they also need to ensure that they know we're working as fast as we can, because if we don't continue to do that, I do think that a different frustration will build in. But I got to tell you, and I can say this, everybody, especially the people on the ground, are working as hard as they can. Whether it's the municipal councils, the staff, the reserves, the armed forces, just even things you don't think, like permitting for electrical servicing through Service NL. I mean, they're working at a pace that is unprecedented. So that hasn't been a frustrating part yet. It's just the whole taking it all in.
You mentioned this Cabinet Committee in response to, I think, a climate change sort of related question. But is this Cabinet Committee specific for the Southwest Coast, like looking at rebuilding down there?
It is, yes. Yep.
How many homes are now considered uninhabitable?
Right now, they've done an assessment on I think all of them, right? Just let me check the numbers. And they're still trying to figure out, which ones are uninhabitable or not. But right now, we have 48 people, 48 households and 22 hotel rooms. There's been 805 households that have registered with the Canadian Red Cross, but of course not all of them are not inhabitable homes. Those are for different levels of assistance. I think the number was around 260. Yeah, 260 dwellings have been reported as impacted, but structural assessment, to speak to the minister's point earlier, in terms of are they safe to go back into or not, or we've only gotten 254 of those, not only, but so we've almost got all of them. And it's just the ones in Burgeo that are left.
Just the number there. Sorry, it was kind of quick. 48 households in 28 hotel rooms?
That's, sorry, 48,
40 people.
48 people, 18 households, sorry. Yeah.
48 people in 28.
22 hotel rooms.
22
And
hotels.
which hotels? Just
Hotel, Port Basque, or
so
St.
they're all
Christopher's
they
generally.
managed to all stay in their close.
Everybody right now is within the geographic area.
Yeah.
We've heard mayors on the south coast and southwest coast say that, you know, intense storms are becoming more frequent. We've heard climatologists say in regards to Fiona that it's not an if, but when situation for another big storm. Is the province doing anything, you know, looking ahead to the future to maybe protect these coastal communities, prevention, anything like that?
So, yeah, in addition to the rebuilding process when these events occur to accommodate extreme weather events, we continue to look to any new piece of infrastructure to ensure that it is considering new extreme weather events, but we also are working with our federal colleagues with respect to items like coastal erosion and other things, and there is some funding set aside from the federal government to deal with mitigation strategy, because to look at climate change as an absolute, that you can turn off and on is not real. Like, you need to mitigate the strategy while trying to mitigate as a strategy while trying to deal with climate change at the same time. And so we're confident with our federal partners that we will continue to avail of the resources that they're offering, frankly, in mitigation strategies. And they will collectively, we both levels of government, even 3 levels of government, and when you include the municipalities, have built that in to some of the infrastructure applications for funding and things. So that will continue in earnest. Yeah.
If I can add to that, in terms of prepping for Hurricane Fiona, we really have been prepping for hurricane season, not just for Hurricane Fiona, because it's been a reality over the last several years. And from a project perspective, when we install culverts, and I've said it over and over and over, we now install a bigger culvert because we anticipate that it's going to be, and it's through that climate change lens. So whether it's a culvert or a bridge or whatever the case may be, and now coastal infrastructure that we have, yes, we are. We're at the table discussing it with municipalities, getting their feedback. And I've traveled a lot of roadways to witness the infrastructure that we have. So it's a real conversation that we're having, and a proactive one as well.
Freeman, just a brief comment, if I could, on Hydro's stability and adequacy report that was filed yesterday, but they elaborated on it this morning. I just wondering, have you looked right through it, or there's a lot of stuff going on. But
there's a lot of things going on right now. Yeah, no. We're looking at it, digesting it, and we'll comment on it in the future.
If I could conclude with a couple points, just first one comes directly from the mayor this morning after speaking to him, and I asked Brian if there's anything he wanted to put out. The biggest message that he sends out to everybody right now is that there's a lot of work going on in the affected areas, between the assessments, between just heavy machinery trying to clean up, maybe possibly tearing down. There are too many people in these areas, and his message was go home. It's becoming problematic, and on 2 fronts. Number one, we're worried about people's safety, and number 2, it may impede the work that needs to be done. So that's the message coming from Mayor Button this morning when I spoke to him, is please tell everybody that we get it, but it's not meant to be a tourist area. It's meant we need to get this work done. And the second thing, if I could send it out, and we've all been saying it, but just a thank you to the town staff that are out there in all these communities, whether it's the mayors, managers, people out there on the front line, town clerks, the repair staff, you name it. They've been working around the clock, like something I've never seen before. So a big thank you to all of them, as well as the volunteers. If there's a silver lining to all this, the amount of support that we've gotten everywhere and from within has been tremendous. So I just want to say a big thank you on behalf of everybody. The amount of gratitude we have for everybody outside supporting us, and then people within the area supporting each other is a silver lining in all of this. So thank you.
Thanks for joining us here today, and stay tuned for further updates. Pardon me? Well, of course. I mean, I extend my my sincere best wishes to Mr. Brazel on a speedy recovery and safe return to the House of Assembly. I had the opportunity to speak with him myself and pass along my best wishes to a speedy and healthy recovery.